Faith walkers, men and women who walked by faith. We walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. Throughout the scripture, God called men and women to walk with Him in a journey. Many times the journey was difficult, challenging, stretching. But the outcome was always good. They grew in their understanding of who God was and what He required. They grew in their understanding of who they were and what they were capable of accomplishing with God's help. They grew in their understanding of why God called them to walk with Him. Their profiles were as different as their names were. Noah was a boat builder who saved the world from extinction. Abraham was a nomad from Iraq who became the father of many nations. Moses was a prince of Egypt who became Israel's deliverer and lawgiver. Gideon was a fearful young man who became the fearless leader of the original 300. Ruth was a Moabite who captured the heart of a generous landlord. David was a shepherd boy who became Israel's king. Esther was a beauty contestant who became queen of Persia. Mary of Nazareth was a young virgin betrothed to Nazareth's hottest bachelor at that time. Mary of Magdala was possessed by 7 demons, but after Jesus set her free, she became passionate in serving Him. Simon was an angry fisherman who became Peter, the Rock. Saul of Tarsus was a legalistic Pharisee who became the great Apostle Paul to the Roman Empire. Different names, different backgrounds, but all of them had one thing in common: faith. Each responded to God's call with faith. Each continued in his journey with God by faith. They were faith walkers. God still calls men and women today to join Him in a journey. Our circumstances may be different from those God called in Scripture and even throughout human history. But one important element is still common: faith. Let's wade through the pages of God's holy word to find lessons from these amazing men and women of faith. Some of them are characters whose story may be familiar to many. However, there will be some stories which are not that familiar, but nonetheless will teach us valuable insights for our personal journey. Are you ready? Let's begin.
Tell someone near you, God has a word for us today. God has a word. Faith Walkers, Part 3. We walk by faith and not by sight. Let's review. Week 1. Our assignment is to live by faith. God assigns to each person a unique journey of faith. So don't compare your journey with theirs. Don't wish you had their life. Don't wish what happened to them will happen to you. Because, sige ka, not only the good things that happen to them might happen to you, the bad things also. So don't wish that as well. Last week we said faith walkers obey from the heart and walk faithfully. That means that we should always strive every day to walk for the Lord. Hebrews chapter 11 is our main text today, verses 8 through 10. And we will look at the story of Abraham. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. How many of you, you're so adventurous you will ride a bus even though the front does not say anything? Wala lang, sumakay ka lang doon. Pagsakay mo lang doon, sabi nung Manong, saan kayo pupunta? Kung saan ka pupunta, Manong, doon ako pupunta. Okay, probably not, we will check, saan ba rito yung, yun, bus number 1, doon ako. Okay, but Abraham went, even though he didn't know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Do you know that the first architect and the first engineer is none other than God Himself? He designed it, architect. He built it, engineer. You know. Ganun, by the way, ang Diyos sa buhay mo din. He designs your life, and then He builds it. And all we have to do is to trust Him and surrender to His plan. So Abraham, the father of faith. We will examine his story in Genesis so that we can understand better what's going on in his life. So Genesis chapter 11, let's examine the story of Abraham. Terah, this is the father of Abraham. By the way, Abraham's original name is Abram, Abrim. Later, God will change his name when God shifts his destiny. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai. Sarai also, her name was changed. Sarai became Sarah, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. So, from Ur, which is in ancient Iraq, okay, they were supposed to go to Canaan, which is sideways. Okay, so if this is Ur, Iraq, to go to Canaan, which is now Israel, sideways. They went up to Haran, which is Turkey. Okay, so they went up like that, and then later they'll go down. But when they reached Haran, they settled there. They remained there. We don't know how long. The Bible does not tell us how long they were there, but it tells us the very next chapter, chapter 12, in verse 1, that God speaks once again. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Take note, I will show you. Future, meaning God did not show him ahead of time what it was. "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Verse 4. So Abram went as the Lord had told him. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. 75! Super senior na yan, ha? Okay? Yung ang senior lang, medyo ayaw mo nang gumalaw. Okay? Super senior na to, 75. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran. So that means, while they were in Haran, they prospered. They were able to acquire a lot of stuff in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. So again, they went up, and now they're going down. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord, who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So look at this picture, okay? So this is not like a family of 5 people, husband, wife, 3 children, and just decided to take a walk. Okay? Alika, lakarin nga natin dito, magmula Alabang hanggang Putatan. Okay, ganun. No, this is, by the way, 600 miles from Ur to Haran. 600 miles. Can any one of you just out of the blue say, ganun kalayo yun if you were traveling from Alabang? Saan ka aabot? 600 miles? Baguio and back. Wow. Okay. Nakabalik na sila nun. Yun yung first phase pa lang. Ur to Haran, 600 miles. Haran to Canaan, 400. That's a total of 1,000 miles of travel. With camels, with goats, with sheep, with people, with children. Hala, bira, so good mga kapatid. Okay. So now look at this chart so you can understand better about the map. Yeah. So let's say that's Abraham. So he traveled from Ur, an ancient city in Iraq, very next to Babylon, goes up to Haran, which is modern-day Turkey, goes down to Canaan, which is modern-day Israel, and then when there was a famine there, according to the next chapter, they went to Egypt, and then they came back to Canaan. 1,000 miles. Lao Tzu, an ancient Chinese philosopher, said it this way: a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's amazing how far you can get if you just take the first one. But if you don't even take the first, you're not gonna get anywhere. Okay? So sabihan mo yung katabi mo, just take the first. First step. Just take that. So, as we read the story, we have to ask some questions. First question I asked of the story: whose initiative was it to leave Ur? Okay? Why did they leave Iraq? According to Genesis 11:31, it seems like Terah, the father of Abram, was the one who said, okay, children, let's all pack up and go. Okay. But Genesis 12:1 says, the Lord had said to Abram, giving us the indication that this was not the first time God spoke to Abram, but there was a prior call, a previous command. So if I say, for example, I told Brother Lee, so that's probably just now. But if I said, I had told Brother Lee something, that's probably like, before I already told him something, now I'm repeating it lang. Okay? So, the Bible says a truth should be established by 2 or 3 witnesses. So let's see if there's other parts of the Bible that can confirm that this was not the first time God spoke to Abram. Let's go back to Genesis 12:1. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country. The word country here literally means birthplace, translated as the land of his birth in the previous chapter. Now, if God was speaking to Abraham the first time, while they were in Haran, in Turkey, and telling Abraham, leave your birthplace, does that make sense to you? He already left his birthplace. So, if God is telling Abram, leave your country, meaning your birthplace, it should mean God spoke to him while he was still where? In his birthplace. In Ur of the Chaldees, in Iraq. That's where God first speaks to him, leave your birthplace and go to the land I will show you. Let's look at another verse. Acts chapter 7, Stephen, while he was being stoned to death, says it this way: brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia. Iraq is part of this ancient region called Mesopotamia. Before he lived where? In Haran. So that means before Abraham reached Haran, while they were still in Ur, God already spoke to him, right? And told him, leave your birthplace, okay? So let's continue. Leave your country and your people, God said, to the land I will show you. So he left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. So take note of the sequence. God speaks first to Abraham in Ur, then he leaves it and he ends up in Haran. So when his father dies there, he follows God's leading back towards Canaan. So again, whose initiative was it? It does not make sense for Terah to pack up and bring his entire family out without some kind of divine word. So let's look at this next map. This is ancient Mesopotamia. Ur is part of the area that is called the Fertile Crescent or the cradle of civilization. So let me read this to you right now. Ur of the Chaldees, where ancient Mesopotamia is called the Fertile Crescent because of its very fertile soil, suitable for farming all manner of produce. That means the land where they originally came from was a good land. They're not living a desert. They're living a land where you can plant anything and it will grow. It was also called the cradle of civilization because it is the first place where complex urban centers grew. Long before there was mega mall, meron ng mega sa Ur of the Chaldees. In fact, this ancient land was excavated in 1854 and revealed evidence of great wealth, skilled craftsmanship, and advanced technology. So that means Ur was the most advanced city in that day. Okay? I want you to get this because sometimes we think maybe Abraham left a desert. Maybe that's why Abraham left it, because there's nothing happening there, Wala namang kwenta yung lugar na yun. Let's leave. No. Abraham and his family lived in a good land. So the question is, why did they leave it? Because God had something better. Tell someone near you, God has something better. Sometimes the enemy of the great is the good. Hey, okay na eh. Okay na. Don't touch it. Okay na. What if God is telling you, yeah, it looks okay, but there's something greater, something better. So Abraham leaves a good land because God has something better. The only problem was, God did not explain to him exactly where it was and what it looked like. How many of you are like me pag yung mga, di ba, when we were young, mga barkada nag-uusap-usap, oh, come on, it's bakasyon na, let's go, Saan? Bahala na, pag nakarating natin tayo doon. I don't know about you, I'm not that kind of person. I plan. I plan where I want to go. I plan how long it will take me. I plan food. I plan. Apparently, this generation does not. My son, Brian, tells me, Papa, we don't plan. We just, okay, tomorrow, okay, good. We're going to Baguio. And that's why my son is in Baguio right now, because Friday, they decided that yesterday, they're going to Baguio. The day before. The day before they went, they planned. Ako, 1 year ahead, I plan. Okay? So, and if you cannot tell me where we're going, I'm not going there. Okay? But Abraham understood. There's something about this God who is calling me, and I'm willing to go. So the first lesson I want us to learn is this. Faith walkers often venture out into the unknown with nothing more than a promise from God. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Wow. Abraham, he did not know what the plan was, but he knew who the planner was. And because he knew who the planner was, and he trusts the planner, it matters less what the plan is. If you remember the movie Aladdin, the animated version, I think they're going to make a real live version movie right now. But in the cartoon, if you remember, si Prince Ali, who was like a beggar, diba? And then discovers this lamp, so now he's rich, now he's in this flying carpet, right? So he picks up Jasmine from the terrace of the palace, right? And then she asks him, where are you taking me? And then he says these words, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And she says, yes. Okay, hop on. And when they hopped on, and that's where it began. I can show you the world. I'm not going to sing. But the point here is this. She did not know the plan, but she knew that she can trust this guy. She can trust him. And husbands and wives, this is crucial for marriage, because sometimes, honestly, you don't know how to proceed. But if you trust each other, and especially wives, if you trust your husband, that he will not ruin your family, that he will not bring your family to the ruins, but that he will bring your family from good to better to best. Even though you don't know what the plan is, you can say in your heart, but I trust you. And if you tell me, let's go. Tell someone near you, can you trust me? I hope you can. Can you trust God? Yes, you can. Abraham's faith was not in the plan, but in the planner. When you know and trust the planner, it matters less what the plan is. Abraham's act of faith and obedience. How crucial this is, my friends. It set the direction for the future of the people of God. From the Old Testament to the New. If Abraham did not obey God, we will not have the promised land, which is Canaan, which is Israel. Meaning, they would have either stayed in Ur, Iraq, that would be where the people of God will be, or Haran, Turkey. Instead, where is the people of God? In Israel, a land flowing with milk and honey. And all the way to our day, we thank God for what Abraham did. God has a destiny for you. Do you believe that? Do you believe that God has a destiny for you? A plan, a divine plan that sometimes we don't understand what it is, by the way, okay? God does not lay out chapter by chapter, okay? He doesn't say, oh, the next 10 years, zoom, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. How many of you, honestly, today, you look back 10, 20 years ago, could you have imagined your life now? How your life is now? 20 years ago, could you have said in 1997, tama ba ako sa math ko? Could you have said in 1997, in 2017, this will be my life? Can any of you say that? Probably not. No? None of us can, right? But you take it a step at a time because you're trusting that God is directing your journey. And so I challenge you today, trust the God who created the journey and then take that journey with Him. But here is the challenge. Your faith will be stretched. See that word up there? Your faith will be stretched. Your courage will be tested. Why? Because you must step out of the familiar and step into the unfamiliar. Abraham already had it made in Iraq. And then when they went to Haran, they even prospered there. So alam na niya, he already knows the terrain, knows what to do. Canaan was still, where is that? God didn't even show him where. You must venture out of the known and into the adventure of the unknown. And you must let go of the comfortable and embrace the uncomfortable. If you are not willing to do this, you will miss out on the promised land, on God's promised land for you. Because each one of us has one. We just don't know which one. We just don't know where and what and who and how. But there is a destiny that God has uniquely shaped for you. But you have to do these three things. Your faith will say, Lord, kaya ko ba to? Can I handle this? Can I do this? And your courage, atakot ako. How many of you, let's be honest, atakot ka talaga. Sometimes the things God causes you to do, some of you here that are involved in ministry, try to imagine the first time you ever visited a jail. For those of you that are doing prison ministry, try to remember that first time. Did you go there with guns blazing? Yes! Maboborn again lahat ng preso dito. Probably the first time was like, what am I doing here? Okay. Some of you who've been part of our worship team, remember the very first Sunday. The first Sunday, you were up here with a mic, with an instrument, like, you're scared. You don't know what to do. The first time you ever taught a Bible study, the first time you ever stood up and spoke. Come on, the first time, isn't it like, God, what? Sana lang ako. How many of you have ever been given the gift of the PowerPoint? You have the power to point. Lord, siya na lang. Siya na lang, Lord. Not me, Lord. Si Moses had the PowerPoint. Okay. Lord, I can't do this. Si Aaron na lang. Siya na lang. Siya na lang, Lord. And yet, thank God, He is so patient with us. He works in the level of our faith and just works on us until we are able to have the courage. But you have to, again, let me emphasize, step out of the familiar and step into the unfamiliar. Venture out of the known and into the adventure of the unknown. Let go of the comfortable and embrace the uncomfortable. Terah was not willing to do that. When they landed in Haran, they settled there, it says. But Abram took God's word and proceeded to Canaan. Here's the second lesson. Faith walkers seek God's best. They don't settle for less. Hindi pwede ang pwede na. For a man or a woman of God who trusts in God, hindi pwede ang pwede na. You pursue God's best. So they set out from Ur to go to Canaan, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. Why did they settle? Because according to scriptures, they prospered there. They found the land to be good. They settled. They grew their family. They built homes. They grew livestock. They grew plants. So they settled there. It was good, but it wasn't the best. So let me ask you, why do we settle for less? Why? Let me give you 3 reasons why we don't seek God's best and pursue and settle for less. The first is impatience. Ang tagal namang mangyari niyan, bagay na yan. If God spoke that years ago, it still has not happened now, maybe it will never happen. So, okay na yun. Okay na tayo. Dito na lang. So, impatience causes you to settle. The other reason is doubt. Did the Lord really say that? Maybe He didn't. Maybe it's not God's plan. Maybe it's not God's will, so we settle. But the third I find most common is fear. Takot lang talaga. We just genuinely scared to proceed. And if you remember the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, if you remember that in the where our team went to Israel and then we went to Jordan, or we went to Jordan first. And in that cave where is Petra, so there is this scene in that movie where Sean Connery was shot. And the Indiana Jones has to now get this chalice, this cup, the cup of Christ that was used during the Last Supper. Because the belief is, Sean Connery will be healed if Indiana Jones gets that. And if you remember that scene where there's like a wide gulf and darkness from this side to the other side where the cup was. But then, he has to take the step of faith. There's nothing here. It's like, bangin nyo na. And if he steps out, he could literally die. But then what does he say, Sean Connery dying is saying, my son, just believe. And so Indiana Jones on the edge of that cliff, does this. With eyes closed, he just goes like this. Now, I'm not going to do it, by the way. Okay. And as soon as he steps, what happens? A bridge appears to cross over to the other side. Remember Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, we started this series. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, or confidence in the things hoped for, the assurance of things not seen. The promises of God and its fulfillment sometimes are not seen. It requires faith to believe that it will happen. Let me tell you a little bit about stopovers. Haran was a stopover. It's a break from the journey. So if you're traveling, for example, from Manila to the US, for example, and you took a certain airline, it may bring you to a stopover. If it's Cathay, you'll stop at Hong Kong. If it's, Delta, you'll stop in Japan. Things like that. So that's not your final destination. So don't exit there and then, that's not your final destination. It's a stopover. Haran was a stopover. It was supposed to be a momentary pause. Pahinga muna. 600 miles, very tiring. So rest and then proceed to Canaan. Instead, they stopped. It was supposed to be a comma. Instead, they made it a period. It was supposed to be temporary. Instead, they made it permanent. It was supposed to be only for a season. Instead, they settled. And the reason is, Terah, the father of Abram, was not a faith walker. He walked by sight, not by faith. And so when they got there and they began to prosper, Terah must have said, we'll stay here. Abram, however, was a man of faith. So when God reaffirms His call and His promise, he packs up and he goes. Out of respect, Abraham settled, but Abraham was a faith walker. In God's perfect time, he moved. How many of you know God has a perfect time? In everything. They settled and now God was unsettling them. Have you ever experienced the unsettling of God? When God is shaking, God is moving and He's saying to you, come on, decide. So there's nothing wrong with Haran, by the way. There's nothing wrong with Haran. It was a beautiful place. They built a life, a home, a family. But this was not God's final destination for Abram. God gave them time. They prospered. God waited. But now it was time to pack up and move. Time to cross over. And I looked at the map. Both Ur and Haran are on one side of the Euphrates River that travels all the way from Iraq all the way up to Turkey. It was both on this side. It will require faith to cross over so that they'll get into Canaan. I believe with all of my heart that God has a destiny and a plan for each of us, but you have to have the faith to cross over when the time comes. Don't settle for less. Pursue always God's best. God's best was not in Ur. God's best was not in Haran. It was in the promised land where Isaac will be born, where Jacob will be born, where the 12 sons of Jacob will become the 12 tribes of Israel. Pursue God's best. Don't settle for less. God's destiny is His best for you. It will be a blessing, first of all, to you. When you pursue God's destiny and God's plan, you yourself will be blessed. But beyond you, you will be a blessing to others. It will be a blessing through you. What did God tell Abraham? The nations will be blessed through you. But not only that, God's destiny is meant to bless future generations after you. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, 12 sons, 12 tribes, Israel, and goes on and on and on. So when Abraham took this step of faith, it was not just for him, but for the future, not only of his family, but for the people of God. Let me show you this verse, which has always been a guiding verse for me in all of my life. Psalm 32, verse 8. Can we read it together? I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. Now take note of another translation. I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. I will advise you and watch over you. The best pathway. God's pathway is the best. Our pathway is less because we settle. We settle. Pwede na. Okay na yan. Pwede na yan. God pushes us and tells us, hindi pwede ang pwede na. Pursue the best. But it will require sacrifice. It will require faith. And it will require courage. You have to take a step of faith. That's scary. Can you try to remember in your life when you really sensed in your heart God was causing you to take a step of faith and how scared you were? It was scary. When Pastor Chuck first had a conversation with me 17 years ago, actually, let me backtrack. 20 plus years ago, back in 1996, we were on a plane to Davao. And he was teaching, and I was just gonna assist in the practical aspects, you know. I was like Elisha to Elijah. Ako yung tagadala ng acetate projector. Ako yung tagadala ng tubig, you know. So whatever Pastor Chuck needs, I'll set it up, you know, and we'll show it, ganyan. On the plane home, back from Davao, coming back here, 1996 ito, was the first time he told me, okay, Albert, one of these days, you'll be senior pastor of this church. I got so scared, honestly, that I began to think about maybe, no, I don't think so. So that's when the plan to study in the U.S. came about. Okay. And so we were there for almost 3 years. Around December, early January of 2001, all hell broke loose in the Philippines. This was EDSA Dos. The senators walked out, if you remember that, the impeachment trial. Senators walked out. People started flocking there in Ortigas, right? And so nobody really knew what was going to happen in those days. There was talk of civil war. The peso dropped from 1 to 26, I think to like 1 in 40 or something like that. It was a horrible time. It was during that time, while we were comfortably in the U.S., that God speaks to us and tells us, go back. And I tell you, I argued with the Lord. Okay. Lord, this is not a good time to go back there, you know? Do you know what's happening there? We don't even know if we will have a country a week later, okay? But that's how God is. When you become comfortable, God kicks you out. Causes you to be unsettled so that you will then move by faith. And so we came back. In the midst of all of that mess, we came back. And barely a few months later, when things settled down and all of that, Pastor Chuck again had a conversation with me that he wants to turn over the church and I'll be senior pastor. And at that time, and you know this story for many of you, our church was in debt by almost $400,000 for the building, for this building and for the lot. And again, I was scared because I said, Lord, can I wait until that is paid before I take on this role? Okay. I don't want to step in with a $400,000 debt. Is there a better way, better time to do this? But apparently God's time is perfect and ours is not. So I said yes. And if you remember, those of you who have been here for that long, we declared that year to be the year of amazing things, remember? Joshua 3:5. Consecrate yourselves, for the Lord will do amazing things among you. And that year, we were able to pay off in barely 10 months, $400,000. That in our best projection, even Daddy Q was here at the time, his best projection is like 5-6 years based on the current giving. But God caused miraculous giving that year that we were able to pay off this lot faster than New Life was able to pay theirs. He's the same contractor, by the way. Brother Bert Lutilia was joking to me and he said, I built their church first before you, but you paid me first before them. I said, well, I don't know about God, but that's how God moves, But that is really how God moves. When you become comfortable, when you begin to settle, when you begin to walk by sight, God unsettles you so that you will be caused to walk again by faith. And if you obey, the best pathway is ahead for you. You can't see it. Go ahead and give thanks to God. God never shows you like, 10 years soon. No. He shows you just enough to take the next step. And then the next. And then the next. And then the next. And as you keep doing that, you realize that the bridge you're standing on actually is strong. And it gives you confidence to keep walking and walking and walking. Now, if you stop walking and you start getting comfortable, then that place becomes Haran. You settle. You begin to walk by sight and no longer by faith. This is good. This is nice. Nice here. And then God begins to then do this to you so that you will again learn to walk by faith. I challenge you today, whatever it may be in your heart that you sense the Lord is challenging you about walking by faith, whether it's about something in your family, or your job, or your career, or ministry, or anything else, we walk by faith and not by sight. So let me challenge you with these questions. Are you willing today to trust God to walk into the unknown, the unfamiliar, and the uncomfortable? Are you willing to do that? If you're not, then you can settle in Haran. It's a nice place. You'll prosper there. But that's not Canaan. That's not the promised land. So the longer you're there, at some point, it will become detrimental to you and to the people around you unless you walk by faith. Are you tempted to settle for less because you're getting impatient? Lord, how long is this going to take? Or doubt, did I really hear from the Lord? Or fear, oh my goodness, if I step out, what's going to happen? Or if I die? What if my family suffers? Etc. None of us know what the future holds. Abraham did not. But remember what I said a while ago? Abraham did not know the plan, but he trusts the planner. Do you trust the planner today? That he will not lead you to the wrong path. That he will always lead you and guide you along the best pathway for your life. So can we start?